They came here as enemies of the United States, but they left as friends. During World War II, hundreds of thousands of German prisoners were brought to the U.S. In some cases, they were put to work and formed bonds in their communities. Bonds revealed in a trove of newly released letters. NBC's Mark Potter has our report from Tennessee.
This story of kindness and love begins with the horrors of World War II, where the Allies brought hundreds of thousands of prisoners to the U.S. One of the camps, holding more than 300 German prisoners, was built on a family farm in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. Today, it's a quiet neighborhood.
This was the area where the tents were located, and there would have been a barbed wire fence around them with the towers.
The biggest historical treasure from that era was found decades later in the farm owner's house by Lynn Pettis in her great-aunt's closet.
I looked down, and there was a cornflakes box
full of more than 350 letters of gratitude from the German POWs and their families to the Striblings and the Brocks, the Americans, who cared for them at the camp on their land.
Everybody wrote telling them how thankful they were for the kind treatment of their loved one.
For 2 years, the Germans worked the land with the Americans, who fed and clothed them.
They became normal people to them as opposed to enemies.
Their letters from after the war are now at Lipscomb University in Nashville, translated by Professor Charlie McVeigh and German student Ines Konchewitz. In their writings, often very personal, the Germans referred to the Americans as family members.
Well, dear mother, I wish that I can see you. I love you.
Some would send gifts and photos of their new families and were grateful for the many gifts sent by the Americans, including a wedding dress.
I am happy when I see that dress. I am married for 1 week.
It renews your faith in mankind in a world like we live in today, that this could happen even in the worst of circumstances.
Heartfelt letters from long ago, from bonds made during a time of war, still inspiring today. Mark Potter, NBC News, Lawrenceburg, Tennessee.
From a student who comes to the U.S. to come to school, and then gets involved and translates and brings in her parents. But then outside of that, within the university, we've partnered with the Department of Communications, right? And Sarah Gibson and her vision for creating a documentary. We have been working on writing grants so that we can get the funding necessary. We were so excited about the potential documentary that we can create with the Stribling-Brock, about letting people know about this collection and the stories that are behind it. We went to PBS and they have committed to airing the documentary once it's produced.
During World War II, something very interesting happened. Over 300 German POWs arrived in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee and established relationships with the Stribling and Brock family.
Mr. Stribling was an entrepreneur. He was doing things for the community, and he saw that there was a need. You know, all the boys had gone to war, and he saw that if we had the German POW camp there, that they would provide some labor in the area that was needed on some of the local farms and industries. And so he managed to get the camp put on 30 acres of land that he had called Pine Bluff.
These boys had been pulled from all over the German-speaking world, from Austria, from Poland, parts of now Poland, from East and West Germany, and formed into a fighting unit that were losing the battle in northern Africa when they were captured and brought to the United States and all put together in this prison camp in southern Tennessee.
The United States and Germany were at war with each other, but when you strip away the politics and the national objectives, when you have a couple of people just interacting with each other, working side by side in the field, sharing a cold drink of water on a hot day, I mean, in situations like that, people get to know each other. The folks in Lawrenceburg and these German POWs were interacting with each other. They discovered that they liked each other. This is the way that relationships were formed.
They were taken care of. They did not suffer any while they were there, and they could understand when they got back to Germany and saw the conditions in Germany and other people coming from other places, what it could have been like. That they were very, very fortunate to have landed in Lawrenceburg, I guess, at that period of time.
All the local boys were off fighting the war, and so these POWs were used to do the kinds of jobs that they would have done, working in the fields, cutting timber for the railroads. As I learned more about these German POWs, I thought about my colleague, Charlie McVeigh, and I thought, I've got to tell him this story.
POWs, Germans, Tennessee, I could not put my excitement aside. So we have this group of letters, and this really is a window into the lives of Americans and Germans during a very important part of our history, for our state and for our nation.
This collection contains over 350 letters, and dozens of them included valuable photographs, family photographs, and other kinds of artifacts. So when these POWs were released, and it took a while for them to get back home, but by 1946, letters began to arrive from them in Lawrenceburg, and letters will continue to arrive for the next 3 decades.
From German POWs, from their mothers, their family, their sisters, their wives.
My sister-in-law actually found these in a closet in a cornflake box back in 1988, and she'd had them in her house, taken them out of the cornflake box and put them in a plastic container, and they'd been there for years.
And when you read these letters, you're drawn into the relationships that Eugen Hirt, that Johannes Hartmann had with the Brocks and the Striblings. And that's one of the most beautiful things about this whole process.
Holding letters that are 70 years old in my hands, and letters that were written on my birthday 70 years ago, it's just, for some reason, it has a certain value to me, especially since I'm German. It's my culture, it's part of my history.
Life was desperate in Germany in the few years right after the war, and this one family and the connection, the relationship they had with these gentlemen reflects the care that not only they, but many Americans had after the war, not just for the American servicemen stationed there, but for these German POWs that they'd gotten to know the years that they were working here in America.
The newspapers mentioned, okay, they arrived as the German Nazis and they left as the German boys. They were just normal persons as we are, and the Brock family, for some reason, they got to know these persons, and they saw these are just normal boys, just like our American boys, and look what happened. We have this beautiful inheritance of reading about friendship, about love, about giving hope, about encouragement.
These stories are not something of the past, but they're demanding something of the present. The past can often ask us something, but sometimes it demands something. And at this time, the past is demanding something of us. It's demanding for us to remember these stories of these people, that these people needed things, that they needed food, they needed water, but they also needed something more. And what did they need? The Brocks showed them what they needed. They needed mercy and compassion. And all of these are at the center of this beautiful story.